Hey, Vinny Melkus here, Ronin Fishing. And before we begin, please like and subscribe, help me grow this channel. Anyway, so we're getting at a time of the year where one of my favorite finesse baits becomes a real game changer. And especially in highly pressured bodies of water and clear bodies of water and places where there's smallmouth, but not only smallmouth, largemouth and spotted bass fall prey to this bait, and that is the Spybait. Or the Spinbait, however you want to, whatever nomenclature you want to use. I actually call it the sniper bait because of the way you apply this tactically. But we're going to talk about this video, go over the bait itself, applications. Two, the second video, we'll go over the equipment. And then lastly, the third one, we'll go on some on the water stuff, some examples. So, you know, the walk, crawl, run type scenario, which I like. But anyway, we're going to talk about the Do Realis because that's what I like. I mean, I do fish some Lucky Craft stuff. They used to make a spin bait, but we're going to go over the most popular version, which is the Do Realis, and the most popular sizes, the 80 and the 90 and the 80 G fix. Of course, there's like 100. There's one that's smaller too. There's also the Alpha, which they're all, you know, great baits, but you know, the most applicable ones are going to be the 90 and the 80 sizes. Now, if we look at them, I'm going to compare. If I can get them so you can actually see. There's your 90 down here, and there's your 80. You're talking about 10 millimeter difference. 90 stands for the 90 millimeter. The 80 stands for the 80. You're looking at a 3/8 ounce on the, you know, the general size of the 80, just the regular 80, and then on the 90 you're looking at a 1/2 ounce. So let me just pull up because I don't know the G fix off the top of my head. The G fix is an 80 millimeter bait that has it's weighted slightly more aggressively than the regular 80. Either one is roughly about 3/8 of an ounce. You're adding an extra, 1/2 gram or whatever on the 80 G fix, I believe. But the 80 itself is 3/8 ounce, 1/2 ounce, and you can see the weighting system. I picked these translucent ones so you can actually see that the way the weighting is. Now there's three aspects of this bait. I'm going to use the 90 because it's a little bit easier to see. There's three aspects of this bait that make it exceptional finesse and highly pressured bait application. That is, I'm going to go over the first one, which is profile. So if you look at this profile, I mean, there's no doubt that's a very minnow-esque, subtle design. So going through the water, I mean, it looks like, if you've ever seen a little shiner or, you know, one of those thinner, like herring type bait fish, very subtle, smooth moves, just sleek. And this bait excels at mimicking that profile. Now, the second fish attracting characteristic of this bait mimics that of a Cinco. And you're thinking, well, it's a hard bait. How does it do that? Well, this has a very unique design. I don't know if you can kind of see it on there, but these edges that are cut into this, and I believe this is done on purpose by Do Realis. See if we can get a better view of that. What this ends up doing is on a cast or whatever, and when you cast this thing, we'll get into that a little bit more, you want it to fall kind of on a slack line like you would a Cinco. This bait will actually rock as it falls down. It will rock, especially the 80. The 80 is exceptional due to the way those weights are pushing against those curves, causing it to shake and shimmer and list. Now, not only does it do that when you on the fall, but when you start reeling this thing in, this thing will do the same thing. One, it creates a little shimmy like it's a live fish, but it also, in certain situations, will create a flash. That's a triggering mechanism in certain instances. So those are two of the aspects. The third, which is pretty unique to a spin bait, and there's a unique way that these are designed for Do Realis, but it is these props. Now, you can see they are very loose on here. There's a little bit of extra metal there so they can slide and with little resistance. Now what that does is once this thing hits the water, the slightest movement forward or even sometimes on the fall will cause the spins, and that creates the micro pulse. And I can't show you this, I mean, obviously here, but as that water goes through there, it creates small disturbances through these blades. Not only does it go around the body of the bait, and then it hits these other blades here, creating almost like a micro disturbance, or maybe small, disturbances in the water like a propeller. And a fish can pick up on that, because not only is it creating vibration, but it's creating these disturbances like a real fish would with his fins coming through the water. And this is just slightly different, obviously, but fish pick up on that. And I've been able to watch them trail it, and I believe it's because they're picking that up, and then these combined with these other two characteristics, they're able to, it's very tantalizing to them. Now, if you look at the Durealis bait, I'm going to show you this because this is very unique to them, and I believe it's one of the things that stands this bait apart from the other spin baits. Now, we're going to look down the barrel of this, and I'll show you the way these blades are. Now, if you look at this blade, there's two bends in it, right? There's one super close to where it connects to the bait itself, and there's another bend up here at the very edge, the leading edge there. Now, not only does that create a unique displacement of water, but if you look at the back one, now if we put these up like this, if I can get them to stand up, they are opposite. So what that does is, when this thing is falling, or when you are moving it horizontally, this one will spin one way and the other one will spin the other way. And that is also very unique. And it helps one stabilize the bait, but also creates a unique pulsating action. Now, I don't know if I went over this on the second characteristic of the fall, like the Cinco. Now, that happens vertically, right? And I know I'm sidetracking a little bit, but this happens vertically on the way down as it shakes. But more importantly, well, that is very important because you get a lot of strikes that way. But more importantly, when you're using this bait in the proper application, as you're bringing it, well, I did go over this, it shimmies this way as well. So those, but anyway, I guess to wrap that up, those are three characteristics that are make this a very fish catching bait, especially in finesse situations. Now let's go over the application. So this bait, yeah, you can go throw it around and catch fish, but the art of this bait, the detail, the technique lends itself to a little bit more understanding of it, a little bit more understanding of the fish than other techniques. Now, when properly applied, I'm going to give you the when properly applied, because sometimes you can just wing it and do very well, but to day in and day out utilize this bait to the max effectiveness. One, as it compared to other baits, you really have to have an understanding of what the fish are doing. And with live scope technology, with active target, with 360, you can really take it to the next level on understanding how the fish are setting up. Because this bait is so subtle, you need to have a greater understanding of how the fish are actually positioning themselves on the structure or the cover, where they're oriented at. And that's a little different than most baits. Knowing how the fish are oriented, are they faced outwards towards you, or left or right? How are you going to present this bait? Are they looking towards whatever a break, or are they looking out towards open water? And I know that sounds a little bit in the weeds, but it is very important. And with, you don't need live scope or whatever, but it really helps the learning curve, and you can really see how those fish are oriented, and you can present this bait properly. Now, this bait does something pretty unique too, in the fact that, if you look at it, there's really no bill or anything, and you wonder, well, how does this bait operate in the water? Well, you utilize what they call a tracing retrieve for this thing. So you can actually count this down, and what I've found is, depending on water temperature and line size, which we'll get into equipment later, you can expect a foot to maybe a little bit over a foot a second. Like I said, these are variables. It depends on your water temp and your equipment that you're using, but you can count this down. And now that you have live scope and you understand where the fish are, you understand how they're relating to the structure, you can trace this over a certain depth. And what I mean by that is, instead of, as you're reeling this bait, a lot of baits have a tendency either to go down or go up, especially hard baits. This bait, when used properly, will stay in the same water column. So you can actually trace how those fish are sitting. So like we said, it's a finesse presentation. So if you understand where the fish are set up, if you understand how they're relating to cover, especially when they're lockjawed and it's really tough, you can put this bait in front of them at the proper water depth with the proper retrieve, and and it can change your day, like literally turn it from a horrible day to an awesome day. When you're really dialed in with this, you can even almost feel fish following this. And I've talked about this in the past on one of my things. I could feel fish before they bit it with the right equipment as they come up and investigate it and then inhale it. It's pretty amazing what this is. Like I said, this is more of an art type bait, one of the more eccentric baits out there. Yes, you can just throw it, but if you really want to get in the weeds and understand it, yes, you need to have the proper equipment. But I'll go back to the application. So when you're looking at for a fish, a lot of times what I like to do is, when we get in this summer type thing, it's really easy because they pull off on the breaks or whatnot, or understanding boulder fields or shoals or whatnot. If you understand how those things set up and how the fish are setting up on that, you can utilize this bait to trace contour lines, parallel the bank, or throwing to the bank. My favorite is the parallel the bank. Once you understand how the fish are related to this, you can then trace parts of the bank by keeping in a certain water column and target certain fish. And it seems crazy, but you can target singular fish on your active target or live scope or whatnot with this bait. Now when we're looking at like weed lines too. So if you understand, if you're in a lake, you don't have to be at these rocky, highland reservoirs, like I'm talking canyon reservoirs. But if you have a lot of grass in a lake, or maybe even in Florida, as long as you have enough visibility in the lake along grass lines, you can trace around them, trace over them. You can really pull some fish off of this, especially if you know how they're oriented. If their nose is outward, you can really get them. If they're inward, it's a little tough because this is not a very snag-free bait. If you know how they're sitting up on trees, if they're suspended over trees, especially, like if you go to like a table rock or something, you have trees going in 80 foot, and you can see the spotted bass that are sitting over the treetops. You can literally throw this, count it down, and trace over the treetops. Not only that, sometimes utilizing it like a sink over the shimmy will catch fish as well. Now, we'll go into the other part of this. So visibility, water visibility. I prefer to throw this when you have at least 2 foot or more visibility. I've caught fish on this with 1 foot to 2 foot of visibility. But the subtleness of this bait, the most effective way is the clearer the water, almost the better on this. Just because of how realistic it is, the subtle nature of it, it allows the fish to, that visibility allows the fish to get, track it, to get to it, to analyze, or they don't even really analyze it that much, but even if they do, it's something that it triggers them with the multiple aspects of the bait. But in that regard, the clearer the better, in my opinion. But if you like to run on the edges of it, like I said, 1 to 2 foot visibility, it's amazing, especially with live scope, when you're in somewhere where there is 1 foot of visibility or less, what fish can pick up. So I wouldn't be afraid to throw it in there, but if you're truly a student of this application, I would be looking for like the clear water applications. Like I said, the clearer the water, the better. It seems like Lake Mead, clear, type, or you go to a table rock, like I've mentioned before, or even a Grand Lake. Grand Lake is not necessarily the clearest body of water. But what is this effective at doing as well is it can replace certain baits, or you can use this as a cleanup tool. Ledge fishing, if you go through an area with a spinnerbait or a grub, you come back through this. You can even utilize this bait on the fringes of application as a search bait, especially in clear water. Like I said, I've used it on places like Lake Mead as a search bait, throwing it because those fish can see that bait from upwards 30, 40 feet at times, and it will draw them out, and you can see how you can get a better understanding of what they're doing or where they're holding, not only with your live technology, but it just gives you a better picture. So you can utilize this bait in a number of ways. Like I said, I like to use it as more of a sniper bait. They call it silent capture, which is tracing the water column after I understand what the fish are doing. Now you can actually throw this 80. We'll go over the equipment later, but like in the next video. But just to wrap this one up, I'll go over what generally what that is. The 80. Oh, let's go over this real quick. So there's different line ties on this. So this is, I believe, an older generation. The newer generation has the smaller line tie. Don't be afraid of them. They both work amazing. So if you end up receiving some of this or see some of these on the tackle wall with the larger line tie, don't worry about it. Now, anyway, so this 80 right here, I typically throw this on spinning gear, and that has to do with, you know, mainly line, just the ability to allow it to free fall a little bit better, and it just seems to be a better application. But however, this is a 1/2 ounce bait, or a 3/8 ounce bait. This can be thrown on a light bait caster. Now, with that regard, we go to the 90. I actually throw this on a light bait caster. You can throw this on a spinning rod though. And sometimes if you're really getting them on the fall and you just want to up the profile a little bit, you probably do want to throw it on a spinning rod. But I like to throw this because just a 1/2 ounce bait on a bait cast rod, and we'll get into that later how I do that, because one of the things you don't really want to do on this is throw it on a tight line. You want that slack line to get that listing action as it falls down. Now the last thing I guess we'll go over is the color schemes. Now these are $13 baits currently, roughly, you know, or you know, $13, $14 baits, so they're not necessarily cheap. So if you're just getting into this, there's kind of a rule of thumb, or a general rule of thumb, I'll say, when you're picking baits. Now here's what I would do. You don't have necessarily, like this case, I have 2 of the same color and 2 different sizes. If it was me and I had to like really pick, when I would get, you know, one, whatever size you want in like a color like this is just translucent, a very natural color. Let me pull some more here. I've got a couple. See, I don't have a whole lot of them because they are expensive. But what I've done is I varied my colors. So I have my very natural translucent shad. I have my more gaudy, barely pull this one, flashy. This is translucent, but you can get one that's more solid flash. This is a real flashy shad. And when you apply those like cloudy days, well, there's different schools of thought on that. What, you know, sunny days you want the flash, which I tend to subscribe to that, but I don't always sometimes I like to have that little bit of flash in the cloudy days and go to the transparent. Depends on how the fish are they really pressured. If they're really pressured, I'll do the opposite like that. But in the general rule, you'll use that flash in the sun because it will reflect that sun, and you can trigger some strikes. And in the cloud, you'll use that more solid, or like the color I showed you. It is transparent, but at the same time, it's more of a solid, dull color. Now, when we get up to another color, like depending on where you are, like if you're in the north, where you know your fish might be feeding on a goby, or they might be feeding on a yellow perch or whatnot, I'll get a color that's like this. It's kind of out there a little bit. It's more of a specific application, but I've actually caught fish in other places of the country off this. Then I have 2 other ones. I have an off-the-wall color like this. This is a solid kind of like black with a little bit of tinge. Now I'm actually getting another one that's kind of off the wall, like a pink, of my one off-the-wall color. And then I'll have another one, like a super natural general application one. And this one right here is a shiner, I believe. That's what it looks like to me, but it's a very natural color. But you just get a few of those, and like I said, you don't have to get them all, you know, double, you know, a same color in both sizes. If you're trying to save money, I'd get a couple colors in one size, get a couple colors in the other size, and you can bounce back and forth. I mean, both sizes do awesome. So, and from my experience, I know there's other people who said that, you know, the 90 doesn't work, doesn't have the same action as the 80, which that's not in my opinion, that's wrong, and I can prove that. And mainly I believe that is because of probably the equipment that they're using. Now when we get into the equipment in the next video, I'll explain, and then when we're on the water I can show you that your line size and your equipment will affect the way that bait operates. And there's a reason why you use the equipment that you do with this bait, is to, you know, amplify the characteristics that have been designed in the bait, and marginally it'll give you that extra 1 to 2 bites, maybe even more. It might even be the deal on a really bad day. But anyway, like, subscribe, stay tuned for the second video, and then we'll get on to the third one. But this is one of my favorite finesse baits, because when it is on, when things are really bad and you pull this thing out and it really is on, it is on. It is a fun bite, and when you get dialed in on it, you can really get dialed in. Like, I've said in a previous video, I can almost tell what fish species is following it by feeling the bait when you have the right equipment. I know it sounds crazy, but I've done it and called it a couple times where I was like, oh, this is a smallmouth that's about to hit. Oh, this is a walleye. Oh, this is a pike. Because you can almost feel what is going on when you're really dialed in on this bait. Anyway, peace.